For the past couple months, I've been working on sugar cravings. And as part of that process, I have my embodiment practice, which frankly deepens my experience of contemplation and inquiry in a phenomenal way. So I will often have, I'll have ideas and questions and words and searchable terms just land in my consciousness seemingly out of nowhere. And then I look the thing up and it's exactly what I need to learn about or know about or discover. That happens to me quite a bit. So I started this process of taking on my sugar cravings. In the process, I learned about ERP therapy because one day I just had a boop in my head about my experience feeling a little bit compulsive. I want that, I want that snack. I want that sugar. I want that juice, soda, whatever. That was the feeling of it. And I was like, this feels compulsive. So I did a little bit of research about OCD because I was curious about the language of compulsive behavior. And that's when I learned about exposure and response prevention therapy, ERP therapy. We won't get into that here. You can Google it and look it up and learn about it. There's some really wonderful, this is a wonderful time to be alive. In spite of the creepiness of AI, how much do I love being able to learn as much as I do? Because as a collective, we are sharing so much in a way that's so accessible by posting things online. It's beautiful. Anyway, if you're interested in ERP, look it up. But here's what I took from that for my own process as I kind of deepen into my really amazing experience with unhooking from my sugar cravings. For many years, my focus was on the craving, the experience of fighting with myself, of wanting something that I knew my body didn't want, didn't need. Desire-wise, I had a craving for sugar to soothe something. But in the moment of the craving, I was focused on the overwhelming sensation of needing to soothe the craving. What the ERP framework allowed me to begin to do more regularly, which really freed up a lot of energy. Didn't fix or solve or eliminate the cravings, but it kind of ratcheted down. You can ratchet up. I don't know if you can ratchet down, but diminished the intensity of what I was experiencing. What I saw was that I was fixated on the experience of having the craving, wanting to soothe the craving. Should I, shouldn't I? Fighting it, battling. Oh, I shouldn't eat this. Or next thing I know, I'm driving in my car to go get the snack or the thing that I want. I've done that so many times. Also, I've enjoyed just satisfying my cravings. I think the problem came in when there were health problems associated with eating the things that the cravings pulled me in the direction of, because my thyroid autoimmune unique physical makeup was like, yeah, we don't want that. So please stop. So that's when it became a problem. So then that's when the fight started. It's like, well, I shouldn't be eating this, but I really want it. Ah! And what I learned was that my fixation on the drama of that obscured my ability to see that this craving was generated by some trigger that's off screen, that's underground, that's not quite visible, that's not really noticeable. And just knowing that shifted how I interacted with myself in the moment of a craving. That's another example of the pieces of a thing working together. It's like, is this about the craving? And is it about the chemical reaction in my body? Or is it about the thing that produced the craving? To me, it's about the thing that produced the craving. And the craving itself is a symptom. I thought the craving was the problem or the point, but it's actually a symptom. It's actually an ancillary, off to the side experience. Again, like survival, it's very loud. It literally hijacks and takes over my entire attentional space. But actually, there's a primary thing that's under the surface that I'm not even remembering that caused the craving. A condition, a belief, an experience of some kind is triggering this craving. Where I landed with this a couple days ago was, when I'm noticing a shadow on the wall, it means that there's a primary thing that the light is hitting to create the shadow. And I'm that primary thing. So when I project my fears, disappointments, grief, sorrow, or even my elation and my excitement and my hopefulness onto conditions, onto other people, onto what they do and how they see things and how they feel, when I project and make it about what I perceive to be external stuff, what's actually happening is that I'm doing that. I'm the primary object the light is shining on, and the shadow is being cast onto the wall. So what am I doing? What do I believe? What do I feel? How am I moving? What's my posture? What's my bearing? How am I showing up in this? I think that for a lot of the experiences that we're having and struggling with, there is this dynamic of needing to recognize where we land and center ourselves, and then allowing the groundedness to produce different outcomes, different symptoms, if you will, different conditions. If I wear shoes that are too small for me every day, the shoe, the leather, or whatever, the canvas is going to rub against my toes, and I'm going to have a corn or a scar or whatever. Didn't have to really work at that. It just happened because of the conditions and the way I was moving every day. So how do I move? How do I position myself in my life to become the person who naturally generates this other experience, this other outcome? That's the question I'm living in. And embodiment is central, critical, elemental to that conversation. I'll end by saying a really dear friend of mine passed away a couple years ago. And, well, gosh, it's going on 3 years ago because it was 2023. Oh, we were born one day apart. 20 years in one day. And when I wrote my book, Trust Yourself with Money, she was so excited about it. And she bought like 10, 15 copies and just passed them out like candy. And she was telling her people, you have to read this, you have to read this. And one day she said to me, do you know what you said? Do you know what you did in that book? And I was like, no, what do you mean? And she said, I can't put it into words, but I want you to go back and read your book and tell me what you said. So, this is probably early 2021. I published the book, self-published it, and I published it in October of 2020. So this is probably early 2021 that we're having this conversation. So I was like, the good student, like, okay, I'll do that. And I went back and I read my own book and I tried to figure out what she was talking about. And I wrote out all the lessons I thought I could find. I had a list of like 20 points that I thought I made in the book. And I handed it back to her. I was like, is any of this what you mean? And she was like, no, not really. And she couldn't find language for it. And now, almost 5 years later, I think I understand what she was getting at. She was talking about this dynamic, which I point to very strongly and poignantly and poetically in the book. So I would say that this is one of my elemental beliefs and philosophies and lines of inquiry. I think what she was saying was, Bridge, you were talking about how to generate an outcome by changing the whole ecosystem. Not just going for the symptoms one by one, and then doing the whack-a-mole with like 18 or 85 different symptoms. How do I fix this? How do I fix that? How do I fix my headaches? How do I do that? How do I stop eating sugar? How do I? No. How do we shift the ecosystem? And if you saw my video from 2 or 3 years ago about posture as a framework, there it is again. How do we shift the whole ecosystem so that the things we normalize naturally give rise to these conditions that we want? That is the core of my work as an individual and especially as a coach and teacher. That's what I'm interested in. It's not about fixing and getting another 80 tools. I love tools. I collect them and I use them. But it's about becoming the person who moves in a way that generates the outcome.